everybody. It's Norm from Tested here at Wonderfest 2025, where I have the pleasure of meeting Michael Jane.
Pleasure.
Michael, such a pleasure to meet you. You know, I was drawn here because last year we saw Chris Benoit with the Nerf Herders workshop group.
Yeah.
He has built a studio scale Sandcrawler, and now there are two.
There are two this year, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, this one came out from Arizona, and it was a 5-year build project. So, and it was a passion project.
Yeah.
So I spent about 10 years kind of researching. It was actually Lauren Peterson who gave me the inspiration after a brief conversation with him. He said, yeah, you should really think about building it. And it was that, I think, that really got the juices flowing, because prior to that, I was in droid building.
That's right. You were just telling me just a week ago you were at R2LA.
Yes.
And Mike sent us place with all the other droid builders. It gets bigger and bigger every year.
It does, yeah. And Mike's such a wonderful host.
Yeah.
It's just something that I've always enjoyed. And then to be able to share the Sandcrawler, such a unique
You brought this
build.
there.
I did, yeah.
Wow, cross country.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about because you said you're originally a droid builder. Tell me about some of the droids you've built and how that type of building maybe differs or maybe shares some similarities with the building you're doing here.
Yeah, actually I started with K9 from the BBC broadcast Doctor Who program, which is something I grew up with. And that was a nice introductory build. It was something I could build with my son and family project. And then we went on from there into the Star Wars universe. And so it was a scrubber droid and a mouse droid. And then I would say BB-8 probably was the most complex droid to build.
You went from mouse droid to BB-8?
Yeah.
You skip astromech? You skip the R2?
Pieces and parts, let's say that. Yeah, he never got to a point, and I think part of that was seeing the advent of 3D printing.
Sure.
Because now you go, and it's great to see all these astromechs, but it's also like, what's the next challenge? And taking a lot of the electronics and basically building on that knowledge base and carrying it into a studio model that now can have animations, and you can really take that studio model to the next level. That's what was going on in my head.
What's funny is that, you know, among the BB-8 builders group, everyone has a different approach because the mechanical problem is the thing that makes it your own, right? You're sharing knowledge that way. But we're in studio scale model making, it's shared in terms of the knowledge of how you replicate what they did back in the model shop.
Right.
And everyone has their techniques for aestheticizing there.
Yeah.
So tell me about your approach to the Sandcrawler then, the studio scale, and what you took from what ILM did versus what you wanted to make your own.
I think I was in the frame of mind that I love the history behind ILM, and I wanted to replicate to a degree as much of the historical construction components that I could. And then I knew that eventually during the build process I would have some creative license, and that really came with the non-hero off-camera side, and it also came with the interior. So in the back of my mind, as I was working so hard to match studio kit parts, I knew that eventually I could kind of spread my wings and enjoy that creative process. So that's really where it led to.
And over that 5 years, that's then how you got joined up with Chris and his group and sharing the same information for those original donor model kits.
Absolutely invaluable. And you know, Marvin had come out with a kit which was great, and I wish I'd had that, but I was fortunate enough to take some of his dimensions and rework a little bit and massage some of mine. But having that community, even though it's relatively small and a niche group, but just knowing that there's those people that can share that kind of information is so welcoming. That's a big part of the hobby. I think you know, you can only do so much in isolation in your workshop, but to be able to work with that group and community really brought this to the finish line. I can honestly say I don't know it would be here today.
Well, I love that both of you have taken your own approaches to the creative license on that non-hero side. And he has a big window. You have windows as well. Everything is a window into the interior, right? Because you filled this out. There's so much detail here. Talk about the build out of this interior and how you got it to this scale.
Yeah, this was really kind of always in the back of my mind, the idea of a Sandcrawler would be so active. And there's so much going on because of its scale and because of the amount of materials they collected. So I approached it really looking first at the scale and knowing that the little hatch ladder that appeared.
That's your context clue. you.
It was. It really was. Because from there, it's like, okay, I could scale up my Jawas. And after that, then I know what pieces, parts. And when we start looking inside of the model, I wanted a lot of different little areas that either were in universe or really made you feel like these are all elements that would be natural for a Jawa community.
Yeah.
And so using electronics, using servo motors and things, I could animate and bring little vignettes that really drew the eye to all different areas. And I really wanted to draw people into the universe. You know?
Yeah, what does this end up being? Is it like close to 1/24th?
It's about 130.
130.
Yeah, 130
Okay.
to 134, right in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
then drawing your eye, you do that with lighting.
Yes.
A lot.
Oh, yes.
The pockets of lights. Tell me
Yeah.
about the lighting here, because I see not just blinking lights, static lights, different temperatures of lighting.
Absolutely, very important, because again, we're talking about community of creatures that had scavenged everything. So all the light bulbs wouldn't be brand new. You need some old bulbs, some new bulbs, and then activities. If you've got a Jawa that's working on something, you want to flash a light, when they're welding.
Oh my God. And the Jawas themselves, the little lights in your eyes, pin lights.
Yeah, those are 0.5 millimeter fiber optics.
Yes.
And so I've got all the Jawas that are facing forward. I had to mount the eyes. So I did as many Jawas not facing forward as I could, just because of all the eyes that would need to be done. But yeah.
And we mentioned 3D printing. Also, in the world of electronics, a lot of modern technologies allow you to do active displays.
Right. Yes.
Are those tiny OLEDs in there?
That's correct. Yeah, I've got 3 of them running in there with just little Arduino scripts on them. And when you think of like the pod racer engines, well, they pop the hatch. What's underneath?
Yes.
Or they've got to do some diagnostics. And you don't want it to be kind of rickety, and it's not pristine technology. This has kind of been in the desert technology.
How was the physical construction of the interior done? Were you also using kit bashing? Were they modeled?
Correct. Yeah. This is 3 levels and took about 3 months actually. But with 150 kits to build the Sandcrawler, you got a lot of leftover parts. So I really wanted to carry this exterior, theme into the interior and still use same period pieces and really want to have that sense of continuity from inside and out.
Got it. With so many lights, one of the things that I always have problems with is how to power them, how to get them all kind of tied to a single system and not make it an afterthought. You coming from the Droidbuilder community, that's one of the things you have to do.
Absolutely, yeah. We're working with different voltages, and we need to be able to kind of marry and mesh a lot of different components, whether it's motors, lighting, all into one package. So that's what was done here.
Can you show me some of how the electronic systems work?
Absolutely, I'd like to, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had no idea how well labeled, organized. This is
after
this is
multiple
so beautiful.
droid builds, sure, yeah. After you've done it numerous times, well, how can I make it better? How can I make it more user-friendly? And certainly the labeling and kind of the cleanliness and the wiring, it's not my forte, so I had to work extra hard at it. But I really wanted something that in the future, should I ever need to dabble with it, I'll know what I'm doing.
Can you walk me through some of these components, how they're connected?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a main battery that powers all of the system. That juice comes in and is distributed to different sections. Some of those sections are going to lower the voltage, so they target specific things like LEDs and different needs when it comes to that.
These are tiny voltage regulators that you can adjust and tune them.
Yeah, amplifier. And one thing too is if you go to charge the battery, the last thing you want to do is pull it out.
Yeah.
So there's a nice power port right here to charge.
Wow.
I can monitor the battery voltage right there, so I know where I'm at. Then we have a lot of drivers for various servos. I use the Kyber system for my audio interface right there. And then you don't want an emergency, especially if you're working with remote control. So I've got a nice cutoff switch here. I can avoid that whole crash as it goes off the edge. And then I've got a nice controller for all of the different servos that's integrated as well.
Wow. Did you leave room to add more, or is this to the limit of all that you've kind of designed and integrated.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you start, you've got an empty hull on the inside.
Yeah.
You think you have tons of room.
Yeah.
And then as each component, you realize just how much space that mechanism for the motor takes up, or
Right.
certain things take up. So I've kind of reached the point where I think I've maximized just about every corner
Yeah.
without overdoing it.
Wow, I didn't even realize, I mean, revealing the front here, one, how clean all your lighting arrangement. Again,
Oh, well,
here's where you can see
yeah.
the warm and cool lights
Yeah,
balancing
yeah.
each other. That is such a cool behind the scenes look. And then a mechanized gantry. So tell me about the mechanized movements. What
yes.
actually articulates?
Yeah, so this is a crane down here that would be operated on this servo. Well, it's got a stepper motor here that carries it in the forward and backward motion, and then the servo running it up and down. And I had some limitations as far as interior space goes, so it only has a range of motion that's maybe enough to enjoy, but not so much that it would look totally functional in the real world.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What was the last step? Was it painting the whole exterior?
It really was, because you know, prior to painting,
Yeah.
you know, the build looks like this,
Yeah.
and you know, you've got all those beautiful period model kit parts and everything. And the last step was about 4 weeks of painting, and it's not my forte. So it was a very slow process, and inevitably, I wanted to try and match not only, you know, the specific colors and placement of color, but really that ILM style. And it was actually Chris that came up with a lot of the final paint mapping, so we would know what's that process. And you start out with this kind of harsh reds and browns, and then a mist of black just sort of blends and pulls all those colors together. And the end result, especially when you take it out into the desert, is just phenomenal. Under natural sunlight, you
Yeah.
could really see how the light plays with that kind of ILM style paint job.
Absolutely. Any powder or sand or grit?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially on the tracks,
Yeah.
I did the whole you know, part where you kind of get some of that dust up
Yeah.
in there,
Yeah.
just like the ILMers did when they were filming.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a nice little homage to what they did and worked so hard on.
Now, I saw as you're demonstrating and showing this off, you have a transmitter that you're holding to remotely control, and I see a receiver for remotely controlling all the lights and stuff. But that's not this guy, is it? Tell me what this is.
Oh, no. Yeah, this is the original Fatuba model that was used by ILM in California.
Of their transmitter.
Yeah, and they, as I understand it in my research, there's some models that were built specifically for aerial use and then some for ground use. And finding these old ground models is near impossible. So this one, to be more as an educational tool, is about 5 different models that were cobbled together to get the right toggle switch, you know, and
You've
everything to
kickbashed
match.
together
Yeah.
a transmitter using,
Absolutely.
again, donor electronics from the era.
Fatuba. Yeah, exactly
Wow.
right. Yeah, yeah.
You called it an educational model. Is that the purpose? That's your hope with this?
Yeah, as I've taken it out, I've been to a few different locations now, and it's great to be able to share this story of oral history that came from ILM, because so little was documented.
Yeah.
And not only to pass it on, it's great to see young kids amazed by all of the animations, but there's so much stories to be told behind it. So sharing that and giving these little nuggets of history really is probably where I get the most joy now that the project's done.
And now that it's done.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the key word, right?
In the works. And, over those 5 years, your process of engaging with this connects you with that past, connects you with those model makers.
Yeah, it
and what
really
they did.
does. Yeah, it's just, you know, as hobbies go, there's just so many more elements besides sitting there and cutting and gluing pieces. And it's great to have a lot of that under your belt.
Well, thank you, Michael, so much for sharing with us your incredible build, for making it, driving it all the way here from R2LA.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for watching that video. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you we have some excellent merch. We have a 5-pack of demerit badges for sale right now at tested/store.com. We've got the I hung it off of level demerit badge, the I built the chair backwards demerit badge, the I hit my thumb with a hammer demerit badge. We've got the stapler in my finger demerit badge, and my favorite, I stuck the duct tape to itself demerit badge. Get yours now, tested/store.store. Tested-store. Tested. It's right here. There. Just click there.